Thank you for making it to the last panel today of the 2024 MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. My name is David Rhodes, and it's a pleasure to introduce the panel, Winning with AI, the Future of AI in Sports. Our panelists today are Daryl Morey, President of Basketball Operations for the Philadelphia 76ers, Julie Souza, Global Head of Sports for AWS, Tyrone Millard, Director, Sports at Google Cloud, Kevin Lopes, Vice President, Sports Business Development and Innovation at ESPN. And our panel will be moderated by Matt Russo from Trace3. Again, the panel will run for 45 minutes, and we'll leave 10 minutes for audience Q&A at the end. Please submit your questions throughout the panel using the Cadence app. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Matt Russo. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Let's jump right into it. First, since we're the last panel of the day, I just wanted to start with a big thank you to Daryl, Jessica, everyone at MIT, including the students, for putting together an awesome event. It is an absolute honor for me to help close out day one. This is exactly the type of panel that's brought me to Sloan for many years. And honestly, this is exactly the type of panel that will keep me coming back. It's no surprise to me that that innovation has been a theme throughout the entire day today. The next hour, we're going to build on some of those topics because Trace3, we talk about machine learning and AI. We're talking about the intersection of data and innovation. So innovation in the enterprise is really moving at an astonishing rate. There's disruptive technology that's represented up here, things like Amazon Bedrock, Google Gemini, and others. It's going to just change the way we do business forever. It really is. And Tyrone and Julie, hopefully you noticed that I left out some of your key competitors in Gen AI. But I'd be remiss if we didn't also give a shout out to Microsoft, their sponsor of the conference, and also a very important partner of ours. Copilot is really already proving to be a game changer for productivity in the Microsoft suite. So, but before we jump all the way to generative AI, which we were talking about backstage, there's a concept we talk a lot about, which is AI readiness. So is your data ready and available for AI? What are your governance policies? Things of that nature. So to get us started, I wanted to hear from each of you about your company's perspective. So Kevin, if we can start with you. You represent the brands behind some of the biggest collections of intellectual property ever assembled in Disney and ESPN. Talk to me about some of the considerations you and your team are thinking about as we adopt machine learning and AI.
Great, thank you. First off, it's an absolute pleasure to be on here with these esteemed colleagues here. I've been to this conference numerous times and have the opportunity to sit on the stage. I did host one during the pandemic, but it's definitely different being up here. I work for ESPN, so we're part of the Walt Disney Company, and you said it, not me, but you could argue that the Walt Disney Company has some of the world's most valuable IP.
You gave me that
and so one could argue that. So we need to be really careful that we're protecting our IP in this new world, and we're also honoring and protecting others' IP to be friendly in the ecosystem. And I think also, when you have an entertainment company, you want to make sure that you have the compensation and consent of anyone that you're using AI to replicate, right? So you want to make sure you're protecting name, image, and likeness. So, if you're cloning someone's voice, you want to have their permission. You want to compensate them. You want them to make sure that they understand how it's working. And, it sounds complicated, but I think, if you have clear compensation and clear consent, then I think, the sky's the limit. So we're really excited to work between those considerations at ESPN.
Excellent. Tyrone, tell me about how Google's thinking about it.
Yeah, so we think about it in various different ways. I think we, obviously look at kind of the content side as well, but I think there's also elements of how do we actually integrate what AI is into kind of the fabric of everyday kind of work. And if you think about everything from enabling kind of the workforce in the enterprise to folks who are in kind of stadium and venue operations to athletes to folks who are creators, AI is different for each of those groups of people. So, for us, what we think about is the way we build our products is not so much with specific solutions in mind, but more Lego blocks to help you go and build other areas and things that you'd like to build on top of that. So, we come at it from kind of a different route. I think the protection side is really important. So, we're working on kind of like watermark technology inside image creation, et cetera. So there are areas where, I think we play really, really well. And I think there's areas that, we rely on our partners to kind of help build additional solutions on. So for us, we have a number of different product sets, everything from I sit inside the cloud division. If you think about all the other areas that we kind of play, you know, we have a lot of consumer-facing technology, we do hardware. So for us, when we think about AI, we have to kind of really build from the end user experience first and kind of build that backwards. That's how we think about that.
Well said. Julie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to what you said at the top of this, which is generative AI is sort of what gets put on top of, you know, a foundational AI ML strategy, which sits on top a basic data strategy, right? So this is all a very layered process and opportunity there. And I think that where we're seeing customers that we work with in this space, that they're at all levels of this, right? So some are still trying to get, you know, wrangle together data from disparate sources and different, you know, multimodal data. And then you get into, okay, now let's apply AI to glean insights out of that and machine learning to glean insights out of that. So whether it's talking about next gen stats on Thursday night football, or Brant Berglund from the NHL is going to be talking about some of the analytics that the NHL is doing with Edge IQ. You know, those are all great use cases. Player health and safety is a huge use case for this stuff. And so I'll hold my comment there. But then you look at Gen AI, and then it's like, okay, what do you build on top? How do you take all of that and then create additional things from it that are net new, that are generated, hence Gen AI, right? So it's a process, and I think I personally find all of it exciting.
Outstanding. Daryl, your thoughts?
I would say we're pretty different. I would say mostly we're users of AWS, we're users of Google Cloud. We're just one team in this massive ESPN portfolio. So I'm sort of the odd duck on the panel, but I would say for the Sixers, it's important to think about what is AI. I think that was probably talked about today. Anyone who's been in statistics and predictive modeling, AI has been around forever. I took a class from Jeffrey Hinton here at MIT, who's like one of the godfathers of neural nets, and Michael Jordan, not that one, was his co-professor. And to show you the transition, Jeffrey Hinton was being made fun of by Michael Jordan that neural networks would never amount to anything whatsoever, and he had no argument back. So this was in '97.
Look how that turned out.
Yeah, which is a fun story. But basically all it is prediction, right? Whether you get into the large language models, just prediction of the next word based on a huge heuristic space. And getting to the Sixers, though, we use it for productivity. So on the back end, just like you were mentioning Copilot, things like that. And then we use it to try to improve our predictions. So far, in terms of improving predictions, we haven't found a ton there that beats like the stuff, but that will change. That's definitely going to change. So I don't know if I answer your question, but.
Could I add something we were just talking about?
Yeah.
Right before we walked on stage, we were talking about how the iPhone was like a giant leap in like the advancement of technology. I made a joke about how like the slide phone from the Matrix was like the coolest phone in the world, and then the iPhone comes out and it's even cooler. But you don't really know what the benefit of the iPhone was when it first came out. And it ended up kind of being the App Store that you could date on, or you could trade finance on, trade stocks on. Like all the individual people had ideas on how to make that technology even better. And so I think about that when I think about generative AI. It's like, what kid in their dorm at MIT or Northeastern or University of Rhode Island has like this idea to take what generative AI is now and then put their own spin on it based on the technology. And I don't think anyone quite knows what that is yet. And that's like fascinating to me on what's going to be the next thing. And we exist in this moment in history, in my humble opinion, that like every day we're seeing new incremental innovations in AI. Every day, like the SOAR stuff comes out, or there's a humanoid robot company raises $600+ million. Like that's like all in the last 24 hours, last 48 hours. Like what is it gonna be from the freshman at MIT in 2 years?
I think it's the biggest tech advance of my lifetime since the actual computer, which came out for PCs in like 78, 79. So
right.
I think it's bigger than the iPhone pretty easily because it's even more fundamental.
I agree.
So yeah, we don't have multiple panels like I said earlier because every panel should just be about AI because it's that important for the future of really everything.
So let's stay on the generative AI topic for a second and then work our way back to stats and real-time data and things of that nature. But as we've all agreed we're at a fundamental point, and with that comes risk. So I would love to get each of your perspective on some potential risks for generative AI. Julie, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, and with any technology, right, the responsible use of technology is a big thing. And so, Kevin was talking a little bit about, you safeguarding your IP, and there's a great way to create more IP out there, but are you then appropriating or doing something that infringes on someone else's IP? So those are some of the risks. There's also, people without maybe good intent, right? There's a big concern about synthetic news. I was joking backstage, like you could get to a point where none of us are in the room, none of us were alive or none of us are still on the planet when a next generation of folks come along that weren't here to see the last Super Bowl. And Gen AI could say, let's try an alternate ending and let's put that video proof out in the world. And then have we changed history? So you can start getting to this place where it gets a little draconian, a little scary. Mm-hmm. But I think that's where we all, need to really get, focused, whether it's institutions or governments or the industries themselves, making sure that we have responsible use and safeguards and figure out how to protect against unintended consequences while also realizing the benefits of really powerful tech.
Unintended consequences could also be for the businesses that we represent too, right? Daryl, you talked about productivity. Introducing productivity apps like Microsoft Copilot or otherwise could create unintended consequences that our chief security officers are thinking about. Any thoughts on that?
Not on security. I haven't been good at that. So, that has never been my expertise. But quick story on that. While I was in Houston, the Astros were hacked by another team, and then as compensation for being hacked, they got a first round or second round pick or whatever.
Did they?
And we immediately were like, we should make all our stuff hackable because nothing we have is worth a second round pick. So that's So hopefully we hope one day to be worth a first round pick in the NBA draft with some of our stuff that we do. I would say we're this unique small business. I feel very intimidated being next to these very large companies, and because it's a small business, we're very selective, and our people are very high up on the talent stack. So Copilot and stuff is great. We're just going to move up the talent stack. I think it's the folks who can't do that rapidly or adapt rapidly that are going to be most worried about what the productivity gains can bring. So we should be okay though. So.
Sure. Kevin or Tyrone, anything you wanted to add on potential risk areas?
I think the use case for generative AI applies broadly to a number of scenarios, especially kind of in the enterprise security is actually a really good example, especially if you think about observability and where you could have more eyeballs effectively on something that is monitoring a critical business infrastructure, as an example, like live broadcast or something along those lines. But I think what I was going to add was just to really echo what Julie was sort of saying is, if you think about the use cases for it, it's really good at getting you kind of instant gratification on answers and things like that. But the thing that you have to be really careful with is hallucination and making sure that the data that you're getting back is actually accurate. So that requires you to spend a lot of time tuning the models to make sure that there's nothing that's incorrect that potentially could be coming out as back as.
Can I ask about hallucination? So it's the first. So I've been in computer science for a long time, and it's the first. This is the first thing we don't understand. There are literally papers. And we don't know how it's making that prediction. And we think it's this in its trillions of nodes. That's mind-boggling. We've actually now created something with zeros and ones where every step we made the creation, but we don't actually know how it's producing the results, is completely new, actually. And people don't talk about it enough.
Scary.
Yeah, so there's a lot of scary things with this, but it's it sort of is. This is happening. There isn't going to be a really way to do all this safety stuff. There isn't. There's going to be open source. There's going to be multiple countries, multiple actors. So there isn't actually going to be any way to control it. So you really just should lean into it, honestly, to help your business, to help what you're doing, And there could be a very scary thing you hit, but what's the alternative? Not embracing it? It makes no, yeah, so that's hard.
Yeah, I would say for me to kind of fight the hallucination aspect, right now for me, like with generative AI in particular, I think you always want to have a human in the loop. I think that's why Microsoft branded it Copilot. But like if you have a human in the loop, you can kind of push back on that. You don't want to just generate something currently and push it right out to the public. At least I don't. I mean, I value my position at ESPN. I want to retain it. And so anything that I might propose internally has that human in the loop for now. But humans are flawed individuals, and there are folks out there that I won't make tinfoil hat comments, but there are folks out there that will manipulate it. But for my actions in the organization I represent, we're focused on having a human in the loop currently.
Outstanding. Let's shift gears. Would love to talk about player safety for a second, Julie. I know that AWS has done some work around the digital athlete. The NFL has made a significant investment in partnership with AWS around player health and safety. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about that project?
Yeah, I love this project. So we're collecting data from myriad sources, right? You've got the next-gen stats data coming in, you've got training video, you have computer vision, you have that's coming from optical tracking, you have the sensors that are worn in the uniforms, like, for players that opt in, there's sensors in the mouth guards, tons of data coming in. We're collecting about 6.8 million frames of video per week during the season, 100 million points of location in that same week of where the players are on the field of play, and altogether it's about 500 million points of data that go into the digital athlete to help us glean insights. And the two technologies out of that really are risk mitigation models, or modeling, and which is like to mitigate risk is the point of that one, and then pose estimation, which really helps us and the league understand, okay, what football actions are more prone to cause injury, and then how do you maybe outlaw those actions, right? Things like horse collar, and rules are changing to make the game safer. Equipment is changing to make the game safer, make the players more protected. So it's really exciting, this stuff. And the cool thing about it, it's not just the NFL benefiting from this. I was talking to Sam Schwartzstein, who's the on-air data analyst for Thursday Night Football, and he was saying, the helmets I wore like in college and high school, like you can't wear those in college and high school anymore. Those are outlawed because of the developments in the NFL that have sort of trickled down. So, and I think that there's a broader applicability to, if we can make the workplace safer for athletes, we can make it safer for military, for manufacturing floors, for all these other places too. So sure. I'm really excited. This was the first year that all 32 teams got access to the digital athlete, and it's helping them just, identify, hey, these players are at risk for injury. Let's lighten their load. Or Puka Nacua was saying right before the Super Bowl that like when he sees the boss or the coach come over with the I'm not going to name, it's the Surface Pro, whatever. When he comes over with a look on his face, he knows he's not doing max capacity, and they know he's not doing max capacity. And so it's just helping them, push them a little bit more if they need to be pushed, and also pull them back and protect them if they're at risk of injury. So I love, and it's just the beginning, right? So one of the folks from the Minnesota Vikings said, we're not going back. Right? There's no way to go back from this. We're just learning more and making the game safer, which is great, obviously, for the players and the league, but it's also great for us as fans, so we can keep our favorite players on the field and playing and doing all these spectacular things.
Daryl, I saw you nodding your head. Is the NBA doing anything with AI around player health and safety? Anything?
I know I'd prefer to have the league talk about that, but I know they've done a lot of studies on player health and safety and done a lot to fix our schedule, which was a big issue. Mm-hmm. They used, again, the word AI can get overused, so I would just call it a very well-structured algorithm to set up the schedule to minimize the number of times players have to play multiple times. They also commissioned a study on what things drive injuries and whether or not, which schedule things drive injuries, and I know they factored that in a lot of it. In fact, shout out to Evan Wash, former lead of the conference, who worked on that with a team at the NBA. Yeah. So I would say that. Can I ask a question to Kevin? So I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So speaking, because your IP stuff is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
When someone can just say, I have my lacrosse game at my high school, and I make a virtual Sports Center 2-minute clip of the highlights of the game with, either Dan Patrick himself or someone like that. Well, how will ESPN view those short videos that we're probably 1 to 2 years at most away from?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're not in the business of restricting the free expression of our fans.
Okay.
That being said, if you get to a certain level where it's taking the brand and not honoring it in a productive, healthy way, I think we need to take action there. But we don't have teams of people scouring the internet trying to take the letters away from an 8-year-old kid trying to make a highlight. But if there's a company out there that's disparaging the logo, we probably would need to take some action.
So far it's like copying the sincerest form of flattery. You go there. Now this maybe you can't, but Disney, I want, make me a cartoon like Fantasia, and it's like eerily close to Fantasia.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with the Disney privacy team, I'll tell you that.
So that will be where maybe Disney, you think, would step in.
Yeah, I'll get on the phone after this and we can figure out the answer to that question.
Okay. All right. I'm just more curious than anything.
This is a great time to segue because as we were preparing for this session and we were talking about real-time data, analytics, generally speaking, a few of you mentioned the Big City Greens initiative with the NHL. So we're talking about fan engagement a little bit here. The NHL's Big City Greens Classic, it's going to be coming up, streamed live on ESPN+, a bunch of different Disney channels and properties on March 9th. And for those of you who don't know about the Big City Greens initiative, the Penguins and Bruins game at TD Garden, it's going to be recreated in a virtual environment featuring 3D animated players whose movements are synced with real-life players on the ice. Really, really cool technology. So Kevin, if I come back to you, just curious to get your thoughts on this type of disruptive technology and what it means for fans.
Yeah, I mean, look, honestly, and thank you for plugging it. Next Saturday on Disney Plus. I promised I wouldn't be promotional here, but you did it for me.
Of course, it's awesome.
But honestly, it's probably it is the most fun project I think I've ever worked on at ESPN. Just animating Disney IP with a league partner in the NHL that's just a spectacular partner. And it's one of those ideas that when you go to your league partner and you talk about it and everyone just buys in immediately. Everyone's like, yeah, that makes total sense. And then NHLPA's on board, the league office on board, the innovation team's on board, Disney's on board, and it just kind of runs downhill. And everyone's like, this is just the right thing to do. It's awesome, it's fun, and everyone just kind of makes it happen. Selfishly, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and she thought I was the coolest dad in the world because she loves Big City Greens. If you have a kid of a certain age, it's one of the more popular shows on Disney Channel and Disney Plus. And to take that IP and to experience it together with your kid, and I don't put a lot of stock in comments online, but I did read hundreds of comments, and it was parents with their kids watching it. This is the first time I was ever to watch a hockey game with my son or daughter, and I experienced that. And so it was just a lot of fun, and to bring it back again is cool. Now on the innovation tech side, I'll take the emotion out of it. We're combining multiple technologies in close to real time. You're taking the optical tracking data and you're stacking it on top of the wearable chip data, and it's kind of reading both at the same time and filling the gaps if any of them falls down. And there's a couple quirks to it. I think one of the goals with the player was facing the wrong direction, which is why now we're using both on top of each other. But that's what you do. When you innovate in real time, there's going to be a couple issues with it. But we're super excited to work on it, and the partnership has been spectacular. And it's part of the ESPN difference, that we have the bat phone not only to our privacy friends, but also the animation friends who can provide world-class IP, and we continued that with Toy Story Fun Day Football, and we did that with the NFL. So really excited to figure out how we can do something with the NBA. I know those conversations are at play. Nothing to announce, but it should be fun. I know Julie and I had a great conversation about it, and it was awesome to have folks within the industry really weigh in and feel that it was something that was additive.
It was awesome. I mean, it's awesome because the demo they hit with this, that you hit with this, was tween girls. Now, is that who we were going after? Was the NHL like, that's my fan, right? No, probably not, but how awesome that tween
What
girls.
happens when they fight?
Have you met tween
They
girls?
cut to something. No, the hockey and the actual hockey game.
They just circle each other, and the ref's the chicken ref, and so it's
Okay. So while they're actually
there was no
eating the
fisticuffs.
heck out of each
There
other.
was zero fisticuffs in the big city greens. Yeah.
The NHL though, but so you're just gonna abstract away from that.
Yeah, so we I mean, this is a real meeting. Like we had to sit in a
I
room and go, all right,
figured.
what happens if, and they would just kind of like be skating in a circle, and the ref was a chicken, and our friends and partners at the
There
NHL
needs to be
were
a fight in this
great
game
partners with that.
Marshy.
It was very
Go.
playful. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I love it. What this actually speaks to is what you're leveraging puck and player tracking, the underlying technology right there, and then you are syncing that with, animation, which is no different than the stats overlays you get if you're watching Prime Vision or something like that, right? So what we're talking about is a personalization of content that can reach really discrete fans and allow them to sort of choose their own adventure. I want to watch, the Big City Greens version of the NHL, or I want to watch the NHL Edge IQ version, which is all the stats, or I want to listen to Spitting Chicklets call the game, right? You got Manning Cat, you have all of this. That's awesome. And I think what I credit for this is streaming, because we had a one-to-many linear environment before, right? Where you were trying to feed the least offensive broadcast to as many people as possible. Right. Now with streaming, where people can opt in and choose their own adventure, it's virtually limitless what you can offer them and how you can speak to them. And that makes me so excited.
Dude perfect, right?
Yeah, 100%. Dude perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Can I mention what I love about this?
Yes.
So I just dipped into this and I mostly only saw snark, I'll be honest. Like people saying who wants this, all this kind of stuff. But to me, I love that you're trying a new platform, because honestly, the first time you do it, it's probably not gonna be perfect. It's probably not gonna be great, but it probably will yield 10 other ideas. Like our in-season tournament in the NBA, the most basic, simple idea, and we're basically copying Europe from 200 years ago, but whatever. There was so much snark, and then when it came on, people liked it better, and obviously now they're going to evolve it. If you don't take that first step,
Right.
So I appreciate you guys fighting through some snark at least. So
let's continue down the real-time data conversation for a second. Tyrone, you told me that Google is exceptionally good at real-time data and analytics. So since you own Google's relationship with Major League Baseball, would love to talk a little bit about StatCast.
Yep.
Millions of data points you're collecting on a game-by-game basis. Tell us more.
Yeah, so there are 2,400-ish games a year in MLB. We capture somewhere between 15 to 25 million data points per game. Everything from exit velocity of the ball, spin rate of the ball, at release of the pitch, to when it gets to where the batter is. Exit velocity, arc, distance traveled, all that kind of stuff. So we work really closely with MLB on that to help really power what is their crown jewel, right? MLB kind of lives and dies by the accuracy of the stats. So that's something that we're super proud of in the work that we've sort of done there. We are looking to kind of extend the capability of what it can do across, the minor leagues as well, and then starting to think about actually even Little League as well. So starting to think about how do you actually use that data to feed to live broadcast? Is there a way for us to potentially use that to understand how the players are performing over time? Are they trending in the right direction? Are we kind of getting what we sort of need out of the players over the season? Again, also to kind of think about injury side is understanding at what point does fatigue become an issue. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at there with MLB on that, and hopefully to potentially build out some interesting fan experiences as we kind of continue to work with them.
Excellent. Julie, I think we would say AWS is pretty good at processing vast amounts of data.
Yeah, we don't look at it. Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell us about the NFL and how they used machine learning and the processing power of AWS for the schedule, like you had mentioned earlier.
Oh my God, I love this too. You're asking all the fun questions. So NFL has to consider 26,000 points of data when determining what the optimal schedule is, right? It's how many, away games do you have in succession, travel time, what else is happening in that local market. If you have like New York, where it's a venue that's split by 2 teams, like 26,000 of these.
Yep.
And they would, at the end of the Super Bowl, they would start churning like on servers and like hoping to get like one schedule produced in an overnight batch run or something, right? There are literally 1 quadrillion options for the schedule. That's 15 zeros. I had to look it up. And they're doing it in 3 months, and they're getting an optimal schedule. Not everybody's always going to be happy all the time, right? But ratings and all this sort of stuff. That's a massive amount of compute, and the way they're doing it is they're doing it really efficiently. So the stat on that is they're saving $2 million a year by running it on AWS.
Love that.
And it's awesome.
All right, finally, Kevin, to you on this topic. In our discussions, I think you told me there were something around 200 people in the stats and information group at ESPN. You described this group to me as having the greatest mountain of sports data in the industry. So
I might have said that.
tell us why that's such an advantage for ESPN.
Yeah, I would say I can't talk about that team in this room without acknowledging the folks who are likely in this room who run that team. And Jeff Bennett, I don't know, probably somewhere here. Jeff Bennett's been at the company for a long time. He's built that industry and that business very successfully. We've got probably 225 people that are creating world-class data every day. I mean, we've got the ESPN analytics team, which is part of my larger organization. And Allison Laux is probably here in this room, and she runs a great, tight, narrow team that builds world-class analytics. And we've got 40 years of high-quality footage. We've got 40 years of high-quality audio. We've got 40 years of high-quality, elite-level sports journalism, and real-time data that we're collecting and creating our own. And so we're sitting on a mountain of just an elite amount of sports data and analytics. I would argue it's arguably the largest. And so what does that mean? Like, obviously people say it's a cliche, like data is gold now, but in a world of like generative AI and large language models, like, I have nothing to announce. There's no breaking news here, but we certainly have a strategic advantage. We're really well positioned if and when we ever choose to enter that game. Yep. And we have some control over that given our position in the industry. So that's what we're excited about.
I totally agree. I think the SIG group is amazing at ESPN. And I remember Ben Alamar, I'm a former ESPNer as well, walking into my office one day and pounding the desk, and he was like, "We have to buy Second Spectrum." And I'm like, slow your roll. Like, what are you even talking about? What is this? And then I met Second Spectrum, and I'm like, oh, I get it. Like, this is going to change everything. Like, this is the future of sports, right? And the fact that it's the people like Jeff and Ben and Allison, all these people focused on this stuff every day and thinking about what's next and where can we take it is awesome. So worldwide leader indeed.
Fantastic. Daryl, I'd love to talk a little basketball for a second, if that's okay. So we've heard you talk about the people on your team having a deep domain of basketball expertise, right? And as I look at the NBA today, it seems evident to me that GMs and scouts they're always going to have a place in NBA front offices because you just can't replace the human insight and talent completely. It'll never be fully replaced by AI. Talk to me about some of the limitations of the AI models that your team's using today and why maybe they can't be beat by some of your own team's hard-coded stuff.
Yeah, if by AI we mean the more advanced machine learning techniques, just large data sets pointed at problems, which we have overhead camera data, we have pose data, which you mentioned. At least currently, the general take the big data, point the recipe of models at it, and see if it can predict which draft picks will be better, which players will perform better in the future. So far, none of those are beating our internal stuff. That doesn't mean it won't happen. But so that's sort of the current state. We haven't found one that's beating. So now we're using the latest Gen AI, to use your term, in things like, like Copilot and some of the more foundational tools. But in terms of like just taking the pose data, taking the overhead camera data and saying, tell me which players are going to predict better, that day may come, but it hasn't come, at least for us, yet. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it's a great start. Earlier we were talking about the pick and roll. You had some thoughts on the pick and roll, and through our conversation, you shared that basketball people often disagree about whether a play actually constitutes a pick and roll. So tell us about.
Yeah, I can see in the future where it's used to prove you're a human on to get on a Google server or something like that. Yeah, no, so pick and roll, it's like the simplest play in the history of basketball. It's literally, a person's driving and the person they're guarding gets hit by someone else so that person can no longer just guard the guy. It's the most simple play. Turns out to get complicated in practice because one of the best ways to confuse the defense is to go act like you're about to set a screen, don't actually set the screen, and run away quickly, slip it, or there are other terms as well. And so, or you just run past each other like you're going to and just keep running. And the defense has to, there's a screen coming, I got to, okay, quick, shit, he didn't set the screen. So if you put all that in, coaches don't agree on what necessarily is always a pick and roll or what wasn't. It's a very fundamental component of our game, though, so tagging it's very important. So really, it's almost like you have a dial of this is 95% of pick and roll, this is 5% of pick and roll, but you have to set a threshold and say it is or isn't for most of the analysis coaches want, which is basically whenever we run a pick and roll between these two people, what happens? Do good things happen or do bad things happen? So it's just an example where AI is helpful. It creates the classification, but if you go back and look and say, all the ones it tagged as pick and roll, it's not going to get them all right, and neither would a set of coaches, I guess. So if a human can't do it, it probably means AI is going to have some trouble. Often they're superior than humans, though, in those environments.
I love that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So we've got some questions coming in from the audience. Tyrone, I'm going to send the first one over to you. We see how AI impacts team performance, business operations, and so forth. How do you see it playing a role in partnerships?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so I think if you think about partnerships, most professional sports teams or clubs have multiple partnerships or partners that they work with, and I think if you come at it from a fan experience angle, as an example, if you are if you are watching the Golden State Warriors and you're in the Chase Center and you are a Chase customer, what does that get you, right? So, and understanding whether you're actually in the venue or not at the time when the offers are sent out, I think it's super useful to have something that is contextually relevant given to a particular fan based on where they are. And again, I think that could apply anything from ticketing to customer experience to customer service to in-venue operations. There's a lot where that can kind of play based on whether venues have particular like retail experiences. So most of the kind of the larger teams, and actually in Philadelphia, that's a kind of a great example where it's not just one venue. There are other areas around that. There are retail. There are other things like that. So understanding who is a fan and or also a customer is incredibly important, especially if you're thinking about people who are coming to watch a live event, but also potentially getting involved in retail experiences post that. There are plenty of areas there to think about, like monetization, that is beneficial for both sides in terms of a partnership with like the team and the club, and or anybody else that they're working with. So I think there's lots of opportunity for AI to play inside that space.
You have comments, Julie?
Well, you said something that made me think of your story, so I want you to tell your story.
Oh, I'd love to. I had a really amazing experience watching the first ever Black Friday NFL game. I'm a big fan of the NFL. I'm a big fan of saving money. I had been looking at a particular set of headphones for a week or two prior to Black Friday. I hadn't made the purchase yet on purpose. I was waiting for Black Friday. So I turn on the game on Prime Video, another plug, and in broadcast, I received my first ever real-time personalized advertisement for the headphones that I had been looking at the entire week previously. Immediately made the purchase because, of course, I had to make my first in-broadcast transaction. And I had an aha moment. One, I realized why Amazon spent $100 million on placing that game on Black Friday. And two, just the real-time data that was being processed for millions of customers, millions of fans that were watching that game and delivering personalized ads, it really just blew me away. And so it was the coolest real-time use case I've seen in a long time.
So I have this question about that. So a lot of people are bothered by that because they're like, oh, it's spooky.
Yeah.
Siri's maybe listening to me or whatever. But why wouldn't you want relevant ads?
Yeah.
Like, why would you want irrelevant ads?
Right.
But like, I would say it's a very large percentage of people, like 85%, who are like, oh, like that's just weird. Like, I got the custom thing, right? But it's actually super useful to me.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Julie, did you want to add on to that?
No, I just like your story very much. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So another question coming from the audience, Daryl. This one's kind of great. Could you ever go to your owner and say, I do not want to make this trade because of data that I received by way of AI?
It wouldn't go exactly like that, but something close to that does happen, right? Because Josh Harris and David Blitzer are two primary owners, very intelligent guys, as you might expect. So, yeah, when people are like, that person has final say of X, like that's not really how sports works. Basically, you have generally smart owners, and you generally have very, smart GMs. And it's not just, you make your recommendation, like I want to do this trade, but it's very important you then also walk through the reasons, like what are your main tent poles of support for that recommendation. And one of them can be a model says, this guy is better than that guy. Then you have to follow it up with, and that model has very good reliability and reproducibility in this environment. We're in a slightly different environment. So we think the variance is a little higher, but we're still quite a bit above the threshold of a trade. Yes, we do go into that detail. I assume there are some teams where maybe, the owner isn't as involved, but honestly, sports teams are bought by, billionaires generally. They love sports. And I just always ask, if you were a billionaire and you bought a sports team, would you just not be involved at all and just be like, they're fine? You'd want to hear and be in the action, right? And I think it's actually appropriate because it sharpens the team to be able to explain why they're recommending something. And so, yes, an AI model could spike a trade. You would have to feel comfortable that model has had produced good results in the past,
right.
And that the very important. You're only as good as your past data, really with anything. Humans too. People make it like it's a new thing with predict, but humans are just a product of their environment and data as well. And so if you think that you're in the same similar-ish enough environment that the model is producing to what it's saying is the right thing, that ups your confidence in making that decision. So I don't know if that helped at all.
No, I think it absolutely did. Another question coming from the audience, and this is to the panel, to all of you. As leaders in your organizations, what data or AI skill sets do you think is important to look for in people that you're hiring? Anybody want to start?
I'm not even going to go to the technical skills. I'm going to go to the business skills or we have a saying at Amazon, we always work backwards from the customer, right? So, we could do a lot of really cool things with tech, but tech for tech's sake, without a real value, whether it's helping us make more strategic trades or improve our performance or engage fans or help, protect the health, of our athletes, what's the point really, right? So it's understanding what problem are we trying to solve or what are we trying to advance? How do we make something better? And then work backwards from that. So it's for me, it's the application of those skills less than the skills themselves. Yeah, I could go through and, understand SageMaker, understand Kendra, and understand all these other tools and whatever, and that's fine. But if you don't know how to apply them, that's
Yeah. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the deep domain basketball expertise, right? You're always going to need that. Any thoughts to the question?
First, yeah, the question's important, and I think it's important for the audience, especially folks who are either just starting their career or even later. It really is about adaptability. It really is about having problem-solving skills, the ability to learn something quickly, the ability to make decisions in a group and work well in a group. Even as you add in machines and AI into your group, they just become another component of your team, helping make decisions, helping produce a result. And so it's those foundational skills way more than, Python or the, C++ or whatever the du jour our coding is at that time.
C++.
What's that?
I went to C++.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was.
Oh, yeah.
I was assembly.
We mentioned
yeah,
C++
I'm old.
on an AI panel.
I love that.
I love it.
Well, a lot of real-time data that AIs are doing.
Yeah.
And generally, you'd have to get closer to the assembly level, and so that's why C often. So.
It's curiosity, too, right?
Kevin,
that?
anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah.
Being on a panel with really intelligent people here, I'm a people person. I like to read people in the room. I like to negotiate deals in person. I just really believe in hiring folks that are really hungry and ambitious and respectful. I have no asshole policy, I'll say it. Everyone needs to get along on my team. Everyone has to be a generally good human. But I like ambitious people who learn things very quickly, and that resonated with me. And if you're going to work on the analytics team, you should probably know how to code. You need to be a smart person. All that's a given. But if you generative AI really wasn't that big of a thing 2 years ago. And I tell young people all the time when I talk to classes, it's be the best prompt engineer you can possibly be. You'll get hired somewhere. Right. Everyone's starting at zero. At some point, everyone is faking it. Okay? I'll say that again. At some point, nobody knows what they're doing. And then they figure it out. The difference between people is people fake it for too long and get exposed, and other people learn it aggressively while they're flying the plane. So, generative AI comes out, learn everything you can. Read all the news. Go and take free trainings. Be the best prompt engineer you can. You spend 6 months getting every free prompt engineering training you can find on the internet. If you knew nothing 6 months ago, maybe you're not an expert, but you know a lot. Oh, and you can be a really good prompt engineer. So I just like really ambitious, nice, hungry people who are committed to learning and furthering themselves at all times.
I want to add one thing to what you just said. You want to be a developer, go learn GitHub Copilot, go mess around with it, learn how to code, let the technology help you in your pursuit. I love that.
Yeah, so I was just going to actually echo that as well, which is, AI is not going to replace you. Somebody using AI is. And if you don't understand that you need to get on that train now and understand everything about prompt engineering, and as somebody who's actively looking for those people right now, it is like, finding a needle in a haystack. There is not a lot of people who know how to do this well. And as you kind of work through that, I agree, take every free prompt engineering course you can take right now.
I can't speak firsthand, but this is where maybe some gender differences come in that women, at least studied historically, will sometimes hold back and not, learn as they're flying the plane. And so, and then on the flip side, men will often be on the bleeding edge where the plane's crashes because you're, right? So you have to always be good with a little bit of uncomfortableness and realize that everyone else is also learning on the fly, and to have some confidence and keep pushing. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So we've got about 5 minutes left. I'll just take it down the path here. Daryl, you want to start? Any final parting thoughts?
I'll skip. I'll go here.
Skip. Yeah. No, it's been a fun conversation. I think back to what you guys were saying about being curious and going after. All of you being here is an example of that, right? And so, taking, for those students that are, and folks that are thinking of job changes or whatever in this space, being at things like this is super important. And I'm thankful to you and to Jessica and to everybody who puts this event on. I've been attending for a long time, and it is my single favorite conference in sports. So
I'll echo that. Completely agree. Thank you to you, Daryl, to Jessica, and everybody again. Really appreciated having this conversation. So thank you all as well. It was great.
thanks.
Very cool.